Welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled podcast about controversial comic books. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
And here we are.
We made it.
We made it.
We made it. We've been alive since the Stone Age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made it is what this Flintstones say at the end of this story, am I right?
Do they say that?
Yeah.
Well, they survived.
Okay, so as you've gathered, we are doing Volume 1 of The Flintstones, part of DC's new Hanna-Barbera universe.
I had no idea this existed, I'll be honest. When you guys were like saying we're doing this week, I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about?
You thought we were doing like old Flintstones comics?
I didn't know what to expect.
So what did you think? I'm curious. What did you think when we heard we were doing the Flintstones? We were expecting like fucking the cliche, like typical imagery, and you thought like we were just going to do something wacky story like
God,
Great
yes,
Zoo.
I did actually. And
Okay.
when I saw Fred Flintstone's strong jawline, I was like, what the hell is this?
So a little bit of backstory. DC has published like Scooby-Doo comics, but like for like all ages, like little kid, like team-up books for a long time. But for out of nowhere, I don't know why, they just decided to launch a like mature Hanna-Barbera universe where like they launched it with Future Quest, which has Space Ghost and Johnny Quest, and they have Wacky Racers, and there's a post-apocalyptic Scooby-Doo book, and they're also doing like a Snagglepuss book where he's like a closeted gay actor in Hollywood, I think. It hasn't come out yet. But so the book that we wanted to talk about, and the one that I think has gotten the most attention, is The Flintstones.
Yeah.
By Mark Russell and Steve Pugh. And I actually recommended a Mark Russell book a long time ago called Prez. That was my first, and I think like his only comic book work. That is an amazing political satire.
Yeah, Prez was a book about basically like a girl goes viral on like Twitter, and there's an election going on around the same time. So she basically through a lot of circumstances, a lot of people vote for her as a joking vote, and she ends up winning the presidency. And in a lot of ways, it's pretty much a very leftist commentary on politics, which like this one is.
And when I started reading Flintstones, I was like, where do I know this writer from? And I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it's the Prez guy. That makes a lot of sense.
What I think is funny is Steve Pugh, the artist.
I always thought it was Pugh, but whatever.
Pubes.
Good one, guys.
One thing I find interesting about Steve Pugh's art is it actually reminds me a lot of, in a weird way, live action Flintstones movies, like the ones with
John Goodman and Rick Moranis?
Yeah, exactly. But
Rick Moranis was Barney?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
I think it's one of his last roles before he retired.
Or semi-retired, because he wanted to be more picky about his roles, he says.
No, didn't he retire to like spend time with his kids after his wife passed away?
No, that's what people claim he did, but he said in an interview, like, that's not true. I don't pick every role that comes across my way anymore. I don't star in the fucking Flintstones anymore.
Like it's Moranis like fact corner for the day. Did you know?
So, and Steve Pugh I knew, or Pugs, or Pubes, or whatever, Sly. I know him. He did a horror book in the 90s. He did Animal Man when it was, like, really grotesque body horror.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
So, like, I was... Like, this creative team is so good. Especially, like, when I was like, it's the Flintstones. How good could this be?
Wait, I want to ask Phil first. What was your reaction after you found out what this is? What was your actual quote?
What is this Marxist commie bullshit, I think?
Yeah.
Actually, I actually turned around to Chrissy while I was reading this, and I'm like, I haven't seen this since I was a kid, but has Flintstones always been a critique of consumerism and democracy?
No.
And she was like, I don't remember that. But I was like,
definitely hasn't.
No. I was a kid, so I'm like, maybe I was missing some adult overtones.
The funny thing is, Flintstones was a cartoon intended for adult audiences because it was essentially a ripoff of the Honeymooners.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And the Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason, the guy who created Honeymooners, he wanted to sue the Flintstones, but he said, like, I didn't want to be the one to take Fred Flintstone off the air, so I didn't. But
that American icon.
Well, yeah,
it kind of is.
Yeah, that's, and Flintstones aren't like a commentary on classicism or anything like that, but it was about the working man schlub.
But this is one of the most heavy-handed
that's like the safe like TV version of the everyday man's struggle. This is like what if you're taking it to like a practical realistic level, kind of.
It's way more it's beyond realism.
So let's save that for as we go through it. Did you guys like watch the Flintstones as a kid?
Yeah.
I watched it
I've
a
seen a
lot.
couple episodes. I wouldn't say it was like a normal watch for me or routine watch.
I think that I had a Flintstones Jetsons crossover movie on VHS, and I think I watched
I had
it
that
so
too.
much that the tape wore down. I don't know why I loved it so much.
Flintstones was good, from what I remember. Again, haven't watched it since I was maybe
Yeah.
like 10 or younger, but
So one of the things that I just wanted to point out that I found out yesterday when I was talking to a local comic shop owner, that this book actually, I thought this was an ongoing. This is only a 12-issue series. So this is the first half of it. And I think because of that, that's why they take so many chances with it and make it so, like, out there. Because a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff I thought was, like, a big shared universe, but I think they're just, like, trying out different series and seeing what kind of things work. And it's surprisingly, I've read, like, 4 different titles now, and it's surprisingly diverse and good.
It's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's probably better than a lot of DC's output for like the past couple of years.
Hey, DC's been killing it lately, but that's
this goes back to our this goes back to our old question of why not just tell a new story as opposed to resurrecting Fred Flintstone to become a Marxist?
Would we be doing it on the show if it wasn't
Yeah.
the Flintstones?
Also,
Yeah.
another counterpoint. Prez, the series that me and Ryan mentioned, that series got canceled after 6 issues, and the final issue wasn't even part of the series. It was it was added half-assedly to the back end of another popular series, Catwoman, because like no one read it.
Yeah, it was just like, here, it's Catwoman.
Hey, I
election-based.
wasn't saying this shouldn't be Flintstones. I'm saying it's an interesting, continuance of that conversation.
And it's not like the Flintstones IP is like, there's nothing else happening with it.
Unlike Archie. Archie's sacrosanct right now.
No, but this is what's weird, and this is well, I haven't I haven't rectified this problem. Is I'm against Archie being with zombies, but I'm cool with an anti-capitalist.
because you didn't watch
Marxist-
Flintstones.
No, but I did. I watched Flintstones more than I watched Archie or read Archie.
Yeah, that's what I find weird because you know Archie less than you even said like during the Archie episode, the Archie vs. Predator. You don't know
Yeah.
Archie that much. Your sister does, but like you're so attached. Like this is Archie. How are you doing this to these characters? And then when we do the gay episode of Oops, I Talk Politics. I mean, every episode is gay, but the one we talked about diversity in media, you're like, you can make a character anything. They could be gay, black, Jewish,
yeah.
whatever.
As long as it's not Archie.
Archie has to be a
No,
white male.
it's in that universe. It's not about taking one character. It's about pivoting the universe around a specific topic, which was realistic zombie invasion. Whereas, like, the Flintstones, it feels like it makes more sense. I told Sly that I'm trying to logically find ways to be like, I'm not being irrational. There's a reason not to like Archie's change, but to be okay with this change. But it might be because I'm biased and stubborn. That I'm okay with this.
Mr. Cognitive Dissonance over here.
Based on what you were saying in the Oops episode, I feel like Archie is the exception to your usual taste. And this is more like, I feel like you like the reimagining a lot more.
Yeah.
Like, so I feel like this is more like your cup of tea, and just for some reason the Archie one doesn't
Yeah.
fit in.
It's just
It
it's
doesn't
untouchable.
cater to his biases, but I also kind of love. This is why I love Archie and why I love this book is because this is what I love about comics. Is comics are the only medium where you can really do this. Because now Riverdale happened, right? Now you have Dark Archie regularly, but I don't think Riverdale would have happened if you didn't have the comics showing that hey, you can make this property dark.
I mean, especially because it's the same writer.
Yeah, but I mean like. A TV producer, like if you're pitching Dark Archie, they'll be like, this probably is gonna be stupid and terrible. And like same thing with like if you're gonna make a proletariat Flintstones comic, like the TV producer would never sign off on that.
It'd be so funny if a Netflix show of the Flintstones that was this in live action.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I
And-
could
and,
get
like,
into that like
Yeah.
nobody's business.
And you get John Goodman back for it too.
Okay, so I am hyped as shit right now. Let's talk about this book.
Yeah. All right. So issue 1 opens up. The story is about Fred's boss, Mr. Slate. He's at the
Oh,
quarry.
wait, hold on.
Slate-
I'm sorry. We usually give this description before we start. Do you guys like the art?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
I really love the art.
Yeah,
Okay,
I really like
great.
the art.
We already mentioned it was like realism, but I feel like it's important to note, like, specifically, it is very good.
Yeah, great use of colors. It's nice and like clean. It's not overly complicated. Like it perfectly fits what this Flintstones is aiming for. Where it's like both realistic but in a cartoony world.
Yeah, I was gonna say because when I brought up the comparison to the movies, like because when you would say like a realistic Flintstones, you might imagine it being like almost like caricaturishly gritty, but no, it's actually colorful like the movies, but it's just not as campy in tone.
Yeah.
So the story opens up. It's Fred's boss, Mr. Slate, Slate's quarry. He's hired 3 new Cro-Magnons to work for him.
Actually, we're Neanderthals. They say, right?
Oh, they say that?
Yeah, and that's what sets the tone for the rest of this. It's like, oh, we have racial humor in this.
Yeah, and Fred has to show them around because Mr. Slate really wants to hire these guys. So Fred takes them first to the veterans meeting where they have veteran war stories, and one guy's traumatized.
So if you remember that Flintstones, like he had those big hats, and they were in like some club. In this, it's a like a discussion, like a therapy group. For
veterans. For like PTSD for the people that have gone.
Again, I literally was like, Chrissy, was Fred Flintstone a war vet in the show? I couldn't remember. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't, but.
So after the veteran meeting, they take the Cro-Magnons. Fred goes with Barney with the Cro-Magnons.
You're fucking racist. They're Neanderthals.
To watch a boxing match and eat at a restaurant, and there the Cro-Magnons point at a buffalo and says, "Why did we order that?" And Fred says, "You want to eat the air conditioner?" Which I found funny.
There's also this gets the in between the scene. There's a scene of Wilma, Fred's wife, painting. And it's just handprints, like cave wall handprints. And she's like, what do you think it means? And the appliance, like the dinosaur that's holding up the canvas, is just like, I think it's more about the absence of meaning. And like, it's just, the jokes are solid and like out there.
They're just the whole series is honestly like this kind of critique on like modern society, but this issue in particular, like these Cro-Magnons are just, it's showing like these are uncivilized people come into our civilization and see how they interact with modern society.
Yeah, when we get to the war episodes, like it's really into what people that think they're civilized do to other people that they feel are not civilized.
It's just like that TV show with the Geico caveman, right? It's just as good.
Yeah, exactly. Fred later takes him to the quarry to try out working, and one of the cavemen says, "How come you wear a tie?" And Fred says, "I read an article that said you should dress for the job you want, not the one you have." "So how long have you been wearing that tie?" 15 years.
Oh, jeez.
And he's making like this deadpan, like 1,000-yard stare with the turtle.
Yeah, and so the Cro-Magnons, they hate working at the quarry, and they don't really care about the Pebbles they get in return.
This is a really good line.
What do they do? What do they do at this job? Like, what does Fred do?
They smash rocks into smaller rocks, I think.
Yeah. So Fred asks the Neanderthal, so how do you like making rock? And the Neanderthal goes, I hated it. And then they get their money as a reward, and they go, what the? And Fred tells them, it's money. And they go, what am I supposed to do with this? And he says, I don't know, buy something someone else hated.
I like how you have your Fred sounds more like, the caveman sounds more like Fred than your actual Fred does.
No, I was thinking my Fred sounded more like Barney. Oh, I don't know.
What?
Do you don't know, Fred?
I think the jokes are funny. It's like, this is where I meant, like, it's very, like, it's not, this is not realism. This is like over the top, like, hey, we're critiquing this. Like,
it is.
Buy something someone else hated making. We all hate our lives.
World is,
it's not realism.
Yeah, like I think that the dialogue is very heavy-handed, but I think like the world and the themes are way more realistic than I expected.
Yes,
this is more what would you imagine like if the Flintstones was actually real? Like the animals actually have their own struggles. Like the ones
that's what I like about the comic is that it's very sharp with its critique. Like it's very obvious and it really like puts it out there. And I appreciate it that it tries to like be so bold with a franchise you wouldn't expect this from. Like I didn't want to read a realistic Flintstones comic. I like reading something that's just like, hey, like normal life, the working class life really sucks.
And the thing that impresses me the most as we go through it, you'll see that every issue is a totally different theme.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all tied in, obviously.
That's why I like some of these a lot more than I like the others.
Yeah, but I think that that's a testament to the book that I'm sure we all have different favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a party later at Mr. Slate's with a hot tub. And Slate talks to Fred about fate, saying that after all the volcanoes and the wars that Fred fought in, all that anyone will remember from this area is his sign saying Slate's Quarry. And that's fate. That's all that he'll be the only thing remembered from this place. And so then, as they're partying, Slate asks one of the Cro-Mags to kill a nearby mammoth so they can make a barbecue. Like he's like fucking around with these Neanderthals. Sorry.
Fucking SJW.
All these microaggressions.
Yeah, but the Cro-Magnon goes to try to kill the mammoth, falls to the ice, and is gone. And the two other ones, after the party, they say, "Oh, we're gonna pass on civilization," and Slate and Fred are confused, and the Neanderthals say, "Seems like the point of civilization is to get someone else to do the killing for you."
Again, very, very like overt criticism. They're just like, this is,
Yeah, well, this is accurate. But Wilma, while she's doing this hand painting, she gets a spot at an art show with her weird paintings. And she's placed next to the toilet, and everyone's snobby towards her. Pfft, like the world needed another cave painting. It's so retro, it's daring. Yeah, we get it, sweetheart. Huh?
I like when they walk away from her, they say, "I'm bored. Let's take our challenging commentary elsewhere."
Yeah.
we should also point out that we're skipping most of the jokes because they're mostly very like in the background. Like every place name is a pun on a real place in real life.
Star Bricks.
Yeah.
Outback Snake House.
Yeah, there's just so much like that, or just little references.
There's even
here and
like
there
they
to...
keep up with a lot of the small animal jokes, like how Mr. Slate has a slow turtle that walks around and he tells it to bring them ice cream, and the ice cream melts by the time the turtle gets there.
Yeah. There's definitely Flintstones sense of humor here. It's not just
definitely.
And so, Fred, as he's defending the woman, saying, "Hey, these paintings suck, but you're insulting my wife." And the woman's like, "What? You hate my paintings too?" And she explains to Fred that basically that whenever a person became an adult in her family, they'll put their handprint on the wall, and even if that person didn't come back, they'll always have the handprint to remember them by. And she says that the handprints aren't just handprints to her; they represent everyone she's ever loved, and it's her proof of her place in the universe. And Fred says he feels like he finally understands her for the first time, and that maybe Mr. Slade was right, and there's such a thing as fate, which I thought was pretty beautiful. And it turns out the framing device of this whole issue was this museum, and this tour guide is introducing these people to this Neanderthal exhibit, and they have a frozen Cro-Magnon
Neanderthal.
And I'm sorry, old ways die hard. They have frozen Neanderthal, and it's the one that got frozen trying to kill Mammoth, and since Mr. Slade was fucking with him, he gave him like his jewels and stuff. Everyone in the museum thinks he was the owner of the quarry, so Mr. Slade can fuck off. He don't remember him. Yeah.
So, and that's the first issue.
Yeah.
And I thought after the first issue, I was like, "This is cool. This is a cool book."
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then, so that's the one on like just the modern society.
It's like working racial humor.
Yeah. Then we get into the consumerism issue. So this is on the news, on the Stone Age news or whatever.
Somehow they get television broadcasts.
They do very Flintstones things where they're like, "We have this modern thing. How does it work? I don't know, but here's the news."
Yeah. And it turns out there's a new craze of people selling something called crap. And
see, it's so deliciously heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it was too heavy-handed for me.
Oh
See,
yeah,
I don't think it would work as
maybe
well.
I'm the capitalist piece of shit bourgeoisie, but like it was like a little too much for me. Like better to show that these things have flaws than to just be like, isn't it the worst? Like modern society,
you're thinking
guys.
a humor book that it makes like this is a humor book first and foremost.
That's true. For a comedy, I guess you have to do that.
I mean, you can do subtle humor, but it's framed into Flintstones universe, so it's like it's gonna be like weird if you're trying to be like both quiet with it in a universe where people use alligators to mow their lawns and stuff, or goats.
That's true.
Actually.
And I feel like if it was more subtle, it would come across like trying too hard for me. I like that they
This didn't come across as trying too hard?
No, I think this leans into the comedy more.
I think if it was more subtle, this book would another thing about getting attention in capitalism. You see, ironically, this book has to be the Flintstones. It has to be heavy-handed in order to get marketing. So capitalism is the cause of this book, Ryan Phil. So you're probably capitalism hates this book. But like if this book was more subtle, it wouldn't have be retweeted on Twitter and people saying, "What the fuck are they doing with Flintstones?" Like these fucking.
And we probably wouldn't be doing it right now.
Yeah, exactly. This is going viral because there's so many moments where people.
This is too meta.
Yeah, but like your precious capitalism created this problem.
Your precious cat.
Hey, without capitalism, we wouldn't be talking on these mics. All right. Anyway, so Fred starts buying a bunch of crap, like Power Goat, which is a goat that it's like a weed whacker. a bunch of people buy the TV, all this stuff. And I forgot, this is a critique of religion, too, in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
In this issue. They go to the Church of Morp, and the Morp is this bird. And they're like, oh, in the past, Morp led us to, help guide the tribe. But Morp now is used for...
Someone rocking around?
What the fuck are they doing out there? This is the construction.
It's the quarry. You're outside Slate's quarry.
Yeah, we're ambient noises now. Like right now, Phil's imitating the Slate's quarry to give us the ambience for the story.
This is the working man's play.
Yeah.
So Morp is now used for a consumerist purpose of a record player. So, like, we can't worship him anymore. And so basically, Fred and Barney have this discussion about buying crap because it's expensive to buy all this new crap, but they both want to impress their wives, especially Fred. He doesn't want to let Wilma down. So someone overhears this, and they're like, oh, you need money? Well, you could be a salesman for these new vitamins that people need.
It's Alex Jones, actually. He's selling his new vitamins.
He's selling super male vitality.
Yeah, exactly.
And Barney's like, I don't really want to, but they go off to both do this. And Barney ends up selling loads of the vitamin because Bam Bam is super strong. And
Bam Bam's his son, if anyone's not familiar with Flintstones.
Oh, yes.
It's Barney's son, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And Fred doesn't sell any. He sells one bottle this whole time. And so he's a failure. He makes, like, no money off this. It's like one of those knife-selling scams.
Yeah, exactly.
It's any kind of, like, semi-pyramid scheme kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we basically go back to the church. It's the Church of the Reformed Church of Animism. And they basically are debating over what kind of god they should have. And they pick a new god, a pink elephant named Peaches.
Yeah, turns out that elephant is a vacuum cleaner that they sell.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess none of these gods are real or worth worshipping.
I love the idea that, like, prehistoric people are choosing religion totally arbitrarily because there's no tradition.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, like, really suspend disbelief for the whole thing. You're just like, I don't know how this works.
I mean, this is also a world where a pink elephant is a vacuum cleaner, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fred starts flipping out about not making any money from these vitamins, and he basically tells Wilma, I can't afford all this new stuff, the crap, and I'm sorry if I'm disappointing you. And she's like, I don't need all this stuff to be happy. I need love, and I'm with you. And the issue ends off with them going to the store, and they're like, I want to trade in all the stuff we've been buying. And they trade it for a completely useless product where the owner's like, this guy doesn't do anything. It's the purple dinosaur. And he's like, perfect, we'll take it.
And it's Dino.
It's Dino!
Yay. Also, the religious guy, who's my favorite character throughout all the books, the preacher guy, he's just so awful. But he ends up discovering a new god, and using a blank sheet of paper to show, like, his friend what it represents. So when he shows it to the masses, he shows an empty chair, and they're like, where's the god? And he goes, it's invisible. Then they ask what's his name, and he's like, oh, I hadn't thought that far. Gerald? So from then on, people just refer to God as Gerald. They're like, Gerald,
Yep.
damn it.
Yeah.
All right, so issue 3 is about middle school science day with Bam Bam and Fred and Wilma's kid
Pebbles.
Barney, my Pebbles.
That took me a second.
So Carl Sagan, not Carl Sagan.
He looks so much like Carl Sagan.
Yeah, it's pretty much Carl Sagan, and
it's clear he's wearing a turtleneck.
The writer also in Prez, when the guy picked his cabinet, he pretty much picked Neil deGrasse Tyson and Slavoj Žižek on his cabinet. So it's one thing this writer does a lot. He just has real people as real intellectuals show up as intellectuals in the stories.
I think having it be Carl Sagan is fun.
It is fun.
Okay, so he's giving this science lesson, and I love this lesson so much because at first he's like, isn't it amazing, students, that there are literally hundreds of stars in the sky? And then he's like, now some people think that the Earth is just a wet rock that floats around the sun, which is obviously ridiculous. And then Pebbles goes, well, then what is it? And he's like, we obviously live on the top of a giant turtle. And Pebbles goes, well, then what does the turtle do? And he goes, oh, duh, he floats around the sun in space.
Yeah, they always do this throughout these issues, especially the ones with Carl Sagan, where he's really advanced for his time, but he also has a really stupid belief in whatever.
Yeah. And so it turns out they have a space program, and where they launch a chimp into space, and it looks
so dumb.
Using a seesaw.
it looks like a chimp, like in the U.S. program. You know, it has a white outfit and everything else. But instead of going to space, he just explodes in the atmosphere.
Yeah,
and
they
dies.
just catapult him.
Yeah. And so then advanced aliens then show up just to catalog humanity.
They want to put him on like Galactipedia or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And so, meanwhile, Fred and Barney, they're at their vets meeting, and they're focusing on the war against the tree people who they genocided. And they talk about how they were hailed as heroes after they killed these tree people, but then they couldn't keep their jobs after the war. And one of them, Joe, is really suicidal, and he's like the most fucked up, traumatized out of the bunch.
And he calls the veteran suicide hotline, and they just keep him on hold for like hours.
And again,
Yeah.
like this, it's not. It's both dark, but they're still making light of it because the joke is when he calls it, they say, "You've reached the veteran suicide hotline. Please hold." And they said, "Okay, but this hold music better be pretty damn good."
And they said your impending suicide is important to us.
Yeah.
So the aliens come back, but this time it's Galactic Break, woohoo! And so like, it's just a bunch of teen aliens trying to trash Bedrock.
Because they like found it on Galactipedia as like a new spot.
Yeah. And so I guess there's a commentary on the shitty fucking jocks going to places like Mexico and say, "Yeah, we should build a wall, Trump, build a wall, Trump," while they're in Mexico. And so
and like just polluting everything.
yeah. And so they throw up in Fred's house, and when Fred and everyone else starts getting pissed off and call the police, the aliens actually start murdering cops with a death ray app they have
Yeah, I
on
was
the
like,
phone.
And this is the
Whoa.
first appearance of Yabba Dabba Doo.
Yabba Dabba Doo! But it turns out Yabba Dabba Doo is something the vets created as a way to cope with their PTSD. It's a nonsense phrase. Whenever
So
I guess
it helps
things
them
get-
focus it. Like one of the vets is like when I see my ex-wife with her new boyfriend, or like when I hear, what does he say? He's like, when I hear like
Someone like bumped their shopping cart into me at the store.
he starts hyperventilating and getting like flashbacks, and Yabba Dabba Doo helps them ground themselves.
You can yabba dabba.
That's why I love, like, so much of this humor is both, like, it's dark and kind of absurdist.
Yeah.
I think that just speaks to me. I just really like this kind of humor.
Well, you also liked Predator vs. Archie, and that was black humor as
Yeah.
well. Like,
Yeah.
it's dark, but it's funny. And so Pebbles and Bam Bam, they go to the planetarium where Carl Sarkin is while everyone's getting murdered. And this is
one of my favorite jokes in the entire book.
You want to say it?
So Fred and Wilma are home watching TV, and it's two guys on the news, and one goes, "These aliens are killing people with impunity," and the other broadcaster goes, "Or, to be fair and balanced, they're stimulating the funeral economy."
Yeah. And so Professor Sargon, he wants to hide until the bullies just leave. Bam Bam just wants to fight, and Pebbles wants to tell them to the other aliens. And so the vets start yelling, "Yabba Dabba Doo!" and start taking the fight to the aliens with rock guns. And Joe gets murdered in the fight. And
Poor Joe. This was sad.
Poor
'Cause
Joe.
he was gonna kill himself, and then they slip a note under his door telling him, "We need you, Joe." So he goes out to fight and gets blasted, vaporized, and never comes
Well,
back.
now he gets to rest in Valhalla because he died in battle.
Yeah, he dies in honorable battle.
Yeah. And so the alien mothership comes to pick up the kids, and they leave a game warden on Earth to watch over so no shit like this happens ever again. They call him the Great Gazoo, which is a really reference I didn't expect.
Yeah, I didn't expect it either.
Yeah, it makes sense now when you look back and there were little green aliens. You're like, oh, okay.
If people didn't watch season 4 of the Flintstones, the Great Gazoo was a strange alien man that only Fred could see for some reason. And you wonder why Flintstones got canceled after season 4.
Yeah.
But then they say, we're going to honor our hero, the town says. We're going to honor our hero and then unveil a new statue. And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be Joe. But no, it's the fucking chimp that died in the fire.
And Fred's like, finally they'll respect the soldiers, and no, it's the chimp.
There's a constant theme of that throughout this, that vets are not treated right.
Which is, well, you can't say that's not true.
I'm not saying any of this isn't true.
This is not actual society. We're actually living in a liberal utopia right now, so I fuck
Is it
you.
too direct, Phil? Is that it?
No, I will say, for all the stuff that I was like a little iffy on, the vet stuff was my favorite. Like all the stuff having to do with the Tree People War was my favorite part of the book.
What is that, issue 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it did a lot to flesh out Fred and Barney just because now they're like their complaints are like a vet being mistreated after the war and dealing with PTSD. That's something everyone can immediately sympathize with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think they flesh out everybody. Like, I liked in issue 1, like the Wilma stuff with her tribe and her art and stuff. Like,
What's really cool is they continue to call back stuff that they made. Like in issue 2, hanging up in Betty's house is a Wilma hand painting, and she also continues to do art stuff throughout the series. It wasn't just like a one-off, like this is what Wilma does, and then they forget about it. It's like this is her character.
yeah.
Or like The Simpsons nowadays.
Like they did an actual Flintstones show.
Yeah, no, I mean, this feels more like this felt more like a Flintstones world than I got in watching the show for years as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, so issue 4. It starts 1,000 years ago, where a saber-toothed tiger is watching a bunch of Cro-Magnon men, right? They're not Neanderthals yet, I don't think. And they make a conscious choice to be domesticated, because they're like, we could either starve or join these, like, what do they call them, like, hairless apes or something?
Deformed apes, yeah.
Yeah, deformed ape. Hairless apes is a Howard the Duck thing.
Yeah.
So, and then it cuts to the modern day, and some of the animals are still, like, really... They still look at willing appliances as, like, race traders, and they're, like, mad about... Like, they're like, you know, we're all slaves, but you don't have to be happy about it. And they're mostly judging Dino for it.
Yeah.
Because Dino's like carefree and happy and their favorite.
Yeah. And they just, like... He's a dog. They treat him like a dog. Fred and Wilma and Pebbles, and they just play with him. And so at this point, the news is talking about marriage. And apparently in this world, marriage is new, and society views it as an immoral threat. And they even say it's an immoral threat. And they go, why? And he goes, because it wasn't around when I was a kid. So it's a threat to our lives.
Again, very just like direct, no nonsense.
Yeah.
I wonder what they're talking about with reference to this.
Yeah, or like them trying to like veil it in any way. It's just like, here's what I feel this argument boils down to.
Yeah, and then it gets even more heavy-handed when Fred and Wilma go outside and they're packing the car because they're going to go on a marriage retreat without the kids. And the neighbors go, "Ugh, married people, disgusting. Go back to the sex cave like nature intended."
I like the idea of the sex cave.
Yeah. And you immediately get this view like, oh, I get it.
This is gay marriage.
It's gay marriage. And this is another joke that I know it doesn't matter, but this is the kind of thing when we're talking about like star bricks and stuff. Pebbles is where
oh, this is great. I was going to bring this up.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Oh, Pebbles wears like, because she's a teenager, she listens to like a lot of alternate music, and she's wearing a shirt that just says Nick Caveman.
And like it's just there's lots of jokes like that you just have to kind of read.
Yeah, like she was talking to this record store guy that was wearing a silly hat, and on his shirt it was Devonian, but it was Devo-Neon, which is it's clearly a Devo hat.
Yeah, there's a lot of little brand things or name things that are just like supposed to be references.
So now I think this might be the most heavy-handed thing in the whole book, but I like it anyway. I don't care. So as Fred and Wilma are leaving, they say like, this is the first time we've ever gone away without Pebbles, and like she'll be fine. She's staying with Betty and Barney. And they pass their friends who've also been thinking of getting married, 2 men named Adam and Steve.
Yeah. See, that's again, like the book consistently is very obvious with what it's trying to do. So at no point am I like, this is too much. It's like, it's always too much. You're always like prepared for it being this heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Like if this was trying, like I would agree with Phil more if it was trying to be subtle and it was failing to do so. But no, it's like obviously going for over the top.
Yeah.
Okay, I can dig that.
There's another great billboard. This time it's just for the concept of agriculture. The food just pops right out of the ground. So the marriage retreat that they go to is a hippie circle, and it's the religion guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It always is the religion guy.
So the religion guy has a guitar, and they're doing like the whole kumbaya thing, and he's talking about how they're the future, and monogamists are pioneers for like a new way of life. And they have like all these cliches. There's a cliched old grumpy couple that have been married for 30 years, and they're like most early adopters, we got screwed. And there's a young couple that are like so in love that they can't imagine a world where they're not together.
But they don't understand the point of monogamy yet. They're like, why do we
why
have
marry?
to get married? Yeah.
Yeah, we can just live together and stuff.
Yeah, like they don't see the need because they're like, we'll just feel this way forever. Like, why do we need the government to tell us or whatever? And this is, I think, this scene really worked for me. So he asks Fred, what worries you? and when they're talking about marriage, and he says,
You have to do a Fred voice,
okay,
Ryan.
that Wilma will stop loving me. Marriage is like insurance. You only enter into a lifetime commitment because you're afraid of the future. But does being married mean she'll love me forever? Or is it just my attempt to keep her from finding someone better? Is marriage really a sacred bond, or just the illusion of security? And the thing that I love so much about this is he says this in the circle in front of everybody, including Wilma, and I feel like, because he's this, like, gruff, like, everyman, he frequently, like, opens up and is, like, really vulnerable in front of people, like, especially when he talks about, like, the war, and, like, that's not an archetype I see often.
Yeah, especially if you think like a caveman or a guy of Fred's stature, you're not going to assume it's someone that's, like, open to emotions.
But I think throughout this series, though, he doesn't act really much like your average blue collar worker. He is like more like a
the thinking man, the enlightened man.
Yeah, he is. He's like the enlightened man throughout these issues.
And that's the thing that, like, when you think Fred Flintstone, like you said at the very beginning, when I saw that Fred Flintstone jawline, I was like, oh god. But, like, I feel like this is so... He's such a real character. It's bizarre.
And this is probably one of the most insightful commentaries in the whole series. That because like there's a fear probably a lot of people have, like that their loved one will stop loving them.
Yeah,
and they get into marriage just to make sure they can't leave me.
Yeah, because in theory, like, you shouldn't, like, marriage doesn't have to happen at all, because we don't, especially because we don't, like, sell property this way anymore, or like have, like, dynasties this way anymore. So, like,
marriage is like, it's essentially nowadays it's just makes it harder for someone to leave you.
Yeah,
and it's also like it's a public statement too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, like, I'm engaged. I'm not saying that, like, there's
No,
no place for marriage, but, like, it's putting it in this context where it's before all that stuff. It's like they're asking. This is before there was kings and queens, and, you know, like, what are those called when they give you a gift when
dowry?
you get married? Yeah, dowries. Before all this stuff, they're saying, why would
That's not a
get
gift.
married?
That's a price.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They actually did have a dowry.
Wilma was worth a few goats or something.
Yeah, she traded for 3 goats, and Fred tells her, "Honey, you are worth every goat."
But, like, societally, that's not the structure that the society has.
Yeah.
And this, like, super honest, vulnerable moment leads to the host, the preacher guy, just being like, well, that's great. We also have zip lining. You guys want to do that instead of have this conversation?
Yeah.
So then we get another scene of the appliances, and now that the family's gone, they're like, what happens to us if they never come back? Like, are we free? And they're like, no, they can come back at any moment. Like, please, dust me. Like, we have to be ready to do our job. And the pink elephant from before, Peaches, the vacuum elephant, becomes friends with Fred's armadillo bowling ball, because he's the first one to ever let him out of the closet.
Yeah. There's commentary on him. Wait, oh my god, he's pink and he's coming out of the closet. I didn't catch that subtle commentary.
Oh, I didn't get that.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I don't even know his intention. I think it's kind of funny.
So,
I should notice that.
I know I'm harping on a lot of little things, but there's just there's so much good stuff in here. Like, Pebbles is now with Barney, and Betty and Barney are like, what do you learn in school? And she's like, well, right now we're learning the unit on sitting still and shutting up. And Barney's like, yeah, those are the things that got me where I am today.
Yep.
And we get a conversation between Pebbles and Bam Bam where he asks, do you ever feel strange having married parents? And Pebbles says, not really. I don't really have anything to compare it to. But why only 2 parents? And Bam Bam goes, so you could get a second opinion, which is like a real Flintstones joke.
Yeah, and then behind it is the real serious joke where it's Bedrock Middle School, home of the Fighting Tree People, the people that they killed to form Bedrock.
I didn't even notice.
I love that. It's like it's like a Redskins joke.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That sounds like Jesus.
I saw that too. I was like, oh, that's pretty good.
Really good. And they go even deeper with this concept of marriage, where their Professor Sargon, is explaining all the forces of the universe between atoms bonding, cell theory, formation of civilization, as a response to the universal force of loneliness, that nothing wants to be alone. Which, like, is on the nose, but I was, like, eating this up with a spoon.
Yeah, this is a good issue.
Yeah, and then the preacher is trying to... It cuts back to Fred and Wilma, and the preacher is trying to justify marriage to them, and he's talking to the young people, and he's like, don't you want the man to support you when you're old and ugly? And if she gets pregnant, don't you want to know that you're the father? And the young couple are like, that seems terrible. And
Yeah.
Fred and Wilma are very uncomfortable by this. So they play all three couples play a role-playing game where they're like, pretend one of your partner's dead. What do you do? And like the young couple are crying, the old couple are fighting about life insurance. Fred and Wilma are just really uncomfortable about this whole thing. Like they kind of just want it. They're just getting married because they're married because they love each other and that's it. And they like don't recognize all this baggage that society's putting on the marriage.
Yeah, the preacher's an idiot, and she's like, this is kind of creepy, just pretending that her husband's saying. And the preacher says, oh, no, tell him what he meant to you now that he's gone. He's your love, your husband, your boss. And she's like, what?
Yeah, and then he goes on and says, well, marriage helps society continue because men provide labor and make all the decisions, and women provide babies. And Wilma's like, I don't know if this marriage thing is, like, I don't like what you guys are saying. Yeah. And at this point, an angry mob shows up, and they're protesting the marriage, and they're holding up signs that says, like, 1 man plus 1 woman equals 2 weird.
Yep. And God hates dads.
Yeah. And at this point, the angry couple like start working together because they're like, you can't talk to my wife this way. And basically the host pleads like, you know, we're not making you get married. Just respect our right to succeed or fail on our own. And then so everyone's like, oh, you're right. And it's all understanding. And then Adam and Steve are like, we got married. And he's super against it. And Wilma says, well, what about that plea for tolerance you just had? And he said, I was in the minority then.
Yeah,
I can't be tolerant
like
now. Which is like really good. And then he's like, why should they get married? They can't breed. And Fred tells a story much like Wilma's story about the cave paintings, and it's done like with flashbacks and everything. And he says, I grew up in a tribe of hunter-gatherers. Life was a struggle. It wasn't always possible for people to take care of their own kids. The non-breeders gave our tribe extra hands to help with the children. Having them around often meant the difference between life and death. Our tribe, maybe even our species, wouldn't have made it without guys like Adam and Steve. That's the sort of thing a human being remembers, or ought to. And it's like all these scenes of like a baby Fred being helped, like climbing hills and stuff by like gay men. And the preacher walks away and he goes, wow, I guess I got a lot of thinking to do. But I probably won't.
Which again, it ends on like a dark note, which I appreciate. Instead of trying to be like, this is so impactful, like everyone in the world is changed by what they say. Like all these quips are being obvious, but this world is still being allowed to continue as it is because no one's changing. Like everyone just accepts it as it is.
Fred and Wilma actually have very little impact on the course of their stories, if you notice.
Yeah, that's what I like, because a lot of people don't have impact.
Yeah.
And
life. So at this point, Fred and Wilma are talking, and Fred's like, do you even still want to be married? And he basically, she's like, no, I still do. I love you very much, even though I don't like buy into these gender roles thing. And she says, well, what about you? And he says, well, to me, marriage is about looking at yourself through someone else's eyes. I've had to look at myself through your eyes for 15 years, and you never once made me feel small or ashamed. It's the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. And then they walk home together, and they come in with Pebbles, they play with Dino, and all the other appliances are like, you traitor, you betrayed us. Yeah. How dare you roll over for them? And that's the end of issue 4, which is easily my favorite issue of the 6.
Yep, that one's my favorite too.
Mine might be the first one just because it's so, like, proletariat.
I think mine's this next one. But
the next one is my second.
I also like the marriage one a lot. I think that it does do a good job. Like at the end of every issue, they have like this like powerful Fred moment where it's like societal lesson.
Yeah, it's very. I actually really like the structure because this is one of the few examples of modern examples of single issues working. Like if you're buying this monthly in single issues, like it'll actually work because it feels like an episode of a TV show where it's part of like these characters growing, but it feels like a self-contained story.
I think I could give anyone one issue of this and they'll be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although depending on their taste, it might be.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you might have to choose your issue. A libertarian isn't going to enjoy that first issue.
Yeah.
So this next issue is about an election's coming up, and it's between the mayor and this other guy. What was his name?
Claude the Destroyer?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's basically... I love this line that they bring up to him where, like, they're both giving a speech, And the guy asks him, now you're called Claude the Destroyer, but isn't that just because you're the son of Mordok the Destroyer? Have you actually destroyed anything? And he goes, Claude's name is not issue here. Lizard people are issue. Children of Claude, you shall taste the wine of victory. The lizard people shall be vanquished, and it will be easy. And then a guy goes, he says the things I wish were true.
I actually wonder, like, it feels like Trump has some influence in this story.
Trump is a lot more influential in the second election that's going on, the middle school president.
But even like Claude, like I wonder.
Oh, definitely.
This series has a lot of parallels, kind of to Simpsons in its structure, and like they do a lot of things where there's two congruent stories going on at the same time that are slightly like unrelated to each other that you can follow.
Yeah. That's interesting because when I was thinking about the comparison to Simpsons, like I was thinking like because Simpsons is kind of like Simpsons had a lot of Flintstones references throughout. But like Simpsons was kind of like the spiritual successor to Flintstones, where it was
Flintstones,
where it's like even down to Marge wearing a single dress with pearls around her neck, just like.
Yeah. But it was more like self-deprecating, more like Homer works at a nuclear power plant and he gets fucking bars of radiation stuck in his shirt, and then like fish nearby get 3 eyes. Like it's darker human than Flintstones by far.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it was more about working class, like. And willing to take it to dark territories than Flintstones was, and this seems like kind of a successor to that spirit of The Simpsons.
I could see that,
and a lot of the humor, like early Simpsons, actually it hits well, and there's a lot of visual gags going on in the background with the text or what the animals are doing, and in a way, it really does feel like a successor to Simpsons.
I agree,
even though Simpsons is still going, but
it's dead in spirit.
Yeah. Anyway, so the other half of the story, other than the election, which is it's actually about the school election, but the other half of the story is about.
Hold on, one quote I just want to give real quick. The politics in this issue is summed up for me by a line the newscaster says: "Your vote counts whether you know what you're doing or not."
Yeah. The other half of this story is about Fred and Barney's past, when they were involved in the war on the tree people, and basically how they got roped into it, because they're buying it, like a lot of people are buying into the same sentiment that they bought into by Mordok the Destroyer.
Yeah, and that war was like, I assume it's before Pebbles was, I mean, it's definitely before Pebbles was born, so it's probably like 13, 14 years ago.
Yeah, and so they explain, like, Mordok gives a speech back in the past where he's like, we have to go fight the tree people because...
He says maybe they eat kids.
Yep.
And he's like, let's kill them before we have to find out.
It's that maybe they're coming to sell their pinecone art, or maybe they eat our kids. It's just that idea, like that fear-mongering. It's like, well, I don't want them to eat our kids, so we gotta kill them.
And he's like, let's kill them, plus free hats. And it's those hats that Fred wears when he bowls.
Yeah, I forget where, but I'm pretty sure at some point they say we have to kill them there before they kill us here.
Fred says that when they're fighting.
Yeah.
Or maybe Barney does. When they're in, like, actual combat, they're thinking, like, the reason we're doing this is to prevent this battle from happening in our home.
Yeah, bomb them there before they bomb us here.
So the thing that frames this flashback is Barney's like, well, we fought in the war, and Fred goes, it wasn't a war, it was a genocide.
Yeah.
And then they explain to their wives that they're going to be enlisting, and Wilma's mad at Fred, but Fred's like, I'm doing it for the baby. And then Barney tells Betty this, and she's not sure what he's doing because they want to start a family, but Barney had seen an oracle that said he had slow sperm.
The saddest part is that he signs up because of that. Like,
but he also signs up because Fred is like, what kind of man are you if you're not willing to defend your family from
I like
people?
that Fred pushes him into it.
And Betty, he hears Betty talking, and she's like, I just wish we could have a family too. And Wilma's like, but isn't it enough that you're with the person you love? And she's like, I don't know if it is enough.
Well, she says, like, you're smart, you're an artist, like, you contribute things. I don't do anything. Like, I'm just like a housewife.
I just want a baby to spread my legacy.
Yeah, she said she wants someone to pass her small world to.
Yeah, and like, that to me is really, like, they do a lot in very little. Like,
yeah, Betty probably has the least amount of focus out of all the characters.
But that only makes this scene more impactful.
Yeah.
And like Fred says, like, if you don't fight for the ones you love, what good are you? And that's when Barney goes home and overhears this, and he comes back and goes, fine, I'll sign up.
Yep, and then it cuts back to the present with the bully. His slogan is vote for me or I'll punch you in the beef, and it's basically just about him antagonizing like nerds into working for him. And they're like, Pebbles even asks him, it's like, why are you working for him? It's like, well, I don't want him to punch me in the beef.
One thing I like is that they keep saying like exactly punch me in the beef, and later on when he eventually gets punched, he says, "Oh no, my beef."
I like
that's
that
a
too.
really good closure on that joke.
Yeah.
So then it cuts back to the past, and Fred and Barney enlist, and they go through like boot camp training.
And Barney's very reserved about it the whole time. And Fred's like pretty like a gung-ho all-American boy kind of.
And you get like a very standard like movie boot camp thing, where it's like these are your brothers, your family in the battlefield. You're not fighting for ideals. You're fighting to protect the people, the men you're with.
Unfortunately, it doesn't say I'll make a man out of you though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the present, there's the debate going on between the bully and another nerd, and they make fun of the nerd so that the nerd leaves.
I want to read this. This is the most Trump thing I've ever heard that wasn't Trump.
Yeah, well, he has kind of Trump hair, by the way.
Yeah, he does. And the bully goes, "It's simple. Nothing cool ever gets done because you're led by pukes and weaklings. I'm strong. I say and do what I want because I can get away with it. If I'm president, nobody will push us around. And if they try, I'll punch them in the beef. You think Pork Body over there is going to protect you? I mean, look at him."
Yeah, what are you going to do about this, Pork Body? Cry? And he goes, probably.
The teacher calls him pork body, by the way.
Yeah. And the crying nerd drops out of the race.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Pebbles speaks up against him, and then everyone starts cheering for Pebbles. And
Which shows you how unrealistic this is and how it was before the election, because the smarter woman seems to win the day.
Yeah. And then it cuts back one last time to in the past where Barney and Fred are fighting against the tree people, and there's like a big dinosaur fighting them. That's the armored artillery.
And they kill everybody.
Yeah, and Fred ends up finding a doll on the ground, and he realizes the Bedrock citizens weren't fighting to protect their family.
They were, so Fred realizes because they were saying this is an invasion force that they were attacking, but Fred's like, why would an invasion force bring their kids along? Like, they were just attacking innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Barney finds a child, like, swathed in a blanket in a tree hollow, and it's Bam Bam. Another twist, just like the Great Gazoo thing, where it's like, this is a clever way to introduce, like, more lore to the Flintstones.
Because, like, Bam Bam's always been superhumanly strong.
And the tree people in this are portrayed as being like actually super strong. When the Bedrock people first attack them, they like swat them away with their clubs and they go flying. Like they're really strong.
And I love the way this scene is handled too, because it's the flashbacks and it's him finding Bam Bam, and then it cuts to the modern day and it's Fred and Barney. And Fred's like, "I knew we would make mistakes, but I never thought we'd forget them. Same for me since that war. That day in the forest changed me forever, Barney." And then it's the panel of Barney bringing home Bam Bam for Betty, and he goes, "Me too, Fred. Me too."
No, he says, "Me too, Fred. Me too."
Yeah, you're right.
I also like it because as Fred's saying, "I knew we would make mistakes," to his left on the TV it says that Claude the Destroyer won in a landslide victory.
Yep.
Final issue is the mall one, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then so it opens up with Fred and Wilma at the mall, and again we see more really funny pun names like Panda Excess,
Footlicker,
I like Footlicker a lot.
yeah,
Trans Pangea.
Veggie
Yeah.
Tobel. What's that?
It's supposed to be a vegetable place, but they're like, it's veggies, but it's just like bull and cow toes.
And we go back to Carl Sargon and the Hall of Science or Natural whatever Bedrock Hall of Science gets a grant to study moth breeding, and they're like, "Couldn't we have more scientists with this?" And we see, in fact, Carl Sargon is firing the scientists to hire the kids as interns.
He's like, "Oh, I can get free interns, that unpaid interns."
And then he says, "You guys are better with technology anyway." So it's like the aging out workforce.
Yeah, and not only that,
For underpaid millennials.
Yeah, for you're aging out your workforce and getting unpaid interns to do the work of paid employees.
Yeah, and we see on TV this people saying, "Isn't civilization great? We have brain clubbings down, Grand Theft Wheel down, and witchery down. And how can you explain our peace and prosperity? Well, obviously, people from Bedrock are just better." So it's like
More like Better Rock, am I right?
Yeah.
And Sargon buys a computer because they're computers, and it's an Apagus called the Applecus.
It has like looks like a Apple computer, like in structure, but it's just an abacus.
Yeah.
Oh, also before this, there's a short scene of Fred after he gets paid. He makes a big pile of rocks, and then he gets paid in an exact copy of the pile of rocks he made, but it's all tiny. And then he's like, I gotta relax after a brutal day at work. And him and Barney go bowling, and then his bowling ball, it shows him after work, and he's like, oh, I had a brutal day at work, because Fred, like, throws him into pins all the time.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, so the bowling ball says, like, it's a rough day, but
he's talking to the vacuum cleaner.
The vacuum says, like, the thing that keeps him going is that...
The pink elephant vacuum cleaner.
The thing that keeps him going is knowing his friend the armadillo is on the other side of the closet he's in.
And, like, they're supposed to be, like, analogous to Fred and Barney, that, like, their boss treats them like shit, so they just, like, relax with their friends. But in the meantime, they are also treating their employees like shit.
Yeah, the great circle of strife.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was actually my favorite part of all the things. It's mainly because of the writing that the armadillo is talking about. How he thinks he's gonna die down at the end of the bowling ball lane.
Anyway, yeah, every time.
And it's extremely like weird and sad to do this to small animals, to like have them give this analogy.
It is, but it is sad. That's why it's funny, because like you never think about it when you're watching Flintstones. That like, what is it actually like to be a fucking record player your whole life?
Well, okay, this is a world where their toilets are pelican mouths. I think Flintstones treats small animals even worse than Robotnik does.
Yeah, he does.
Definitely.
Yeah.
He does upgrade them into robots. That's
true.
right.
That's
I said
pretty
upgrade. Robots are better than organics.
All hail our old robot overlords.
Anyway, so they're having this moth breeding time, and all the moths are everywhere. And Sargon is like, "Let me just check the astronomy calculations." And he says, "Oh shit, a meteor is going to kill all of humanity in 3 days."
Yeah.
So they sell this to people, and this starts basically an end of the world scenario where people are like, "Well, fuck this." The news people leave. Mr. Slate is like, "Hey, workers, we can have an end of the world party at my place."
I consider you my friends and family.
Yeah.
He says like, I never focused much on family and friends because I was always focused on work, but I consider you my friends and family.
So you guys can come over, and then everyone's gone.
Everyone
Yeah.
abandons
Yep.
them, yeah.
The church falls apart. Religion doesn't work. They're like, we used to be.
You get a great callback joke where it's the church is falling apart. There's a guy that's like mad because he wants to go and club people again, and he ends up clubbing someone. And back in issue 2, the priest guy was saying you need religion because all you used to do was club people.
That's pretty good. And yeah, they're like, God abandoned us. Let's go back to our old ways. The police are like, fuck it. So they go to the mall, and by they I mean Fred and the family. And Mr. Slate's basically having a martini watching with Philip, his turtle. I think this is his name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Slow, just like this, Phil.
yes, exactly. And he's like, I'm not afraid of dying, but I'm afraid of dying alone. And maybe people will like see my sign one day and remember me that way. And Pebbles is like, please, Carl Sargon, just lie to them so that we go back to normal society. And he's like, oh, I was wrong. There was a moth messing
First, like, I
with
refused to lie, but then it turns out there was a moth that was fucking up his abacus calculations.
And then
Yeah, it was 2 moths screwing on the abacus that looked
And
like
one
a
of them
pebble.
says, call me later.
yeah.
Yep.
And then we have some really heavy-handed again, like commentary where they're like, "We're going back to normal now. I hope we can all pretend we're good people."
Yeah.
And they have this line that life being a series of mutually agreed upon delusions designed to keep us from becoming ongoing accumulations of regret, which I think is way too dark. I will say now that this is over, I think the reason I'm like not getting on board as much is because I do find it like it's like a lot of this commentary. Let me put it this way: I've heard a lot of these critiques from fucking like hippies that are like, hey, modern society is really the worst thing. Look at what, like, we were so much better. Like, look at the Native Americans. They were so happy until we came and ruined everything. But in reality, like, most of these people are really spending most of their happy times in benefiting from things like consumerism, like democracy, like...
I think this is like tongue-in-cheek to a certain extent, because you have Carl Sagan, and he's a scientist, and you have this guy's other book, Prez, where a lot of his jokes were he's getting Neil deGrasse Tyson and Slavoj Žižek intellectuals. Like, I don't think it's saying, like, seriously, pre-civilization is better than civilization, but it's commentary on how, in a lot of ways, modern civilization can be...
It's flawed, yeah.
Yeah. Can be viewed as more savage than, like, when we lived in caves and, like, just screwing each other in sex caves.
Yeah, I think your the problem you're having with it is that it's too pointed and sounds too similar to the like half-baked, half-assed ideas of like, working really sucks. I don't even
Like,
know
let's give
why
up
we
money. Wouldn't that be great? I hear this
Yeah.
from people. They're like, what if we just stopped having money?
But the thing is, it's not making those arguments of why don't we just stop having money. It's like, it's just pointing out, it's like, hey, civilization seems to be based around getting other people to do your work.
And,
yeah.
like, I think stripping it down to such a simple world makes the points really poignant for me, where it's like, especially like the marriage one, like, why do we need this? And like the moral of that issue is because Fred and Wilma want to be married. They want to be like, and like I feel like even though they're like, oh, we have all this crap and stuff, like they still keep the TV and watch the news. They still like, it's not like they're, I feel like the moral is like pointing out the flaws in it, but it's still like they're still using it in society. It's not that like, let's just all get rid of everything. Like they don't free their slaves or anything.
Yeah.
I agree with. I can see where Phil's coming from. If it was less absurd, and if I didn't know this writer more, I might have felt this way more. But
Yeah.
because there are a lot of shit where they do have hippie bullshit messages, like, and then and I hate that aspect when people just critique too much and don't give positive feedback.
It's unrealistic because when you're just like, isn't everything such a big piece of shit? And you're like, there is actually, this is a much more complex topic than you can just.
It is.
Yeah.
But I think it's trying to make a humor out of the proletariat struggle, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I can dig it. I mean, I'm criticizing this a lot. I did like it a lot. I'm just like, I am always guarded when I see that kind of critique.
Because Phil hates comic books.
I think it's very fair to because I hate that myself when people just critique and then basically if it's not perfect, it's not good.
Yeah.
I don't like when it tries to act like it's smarter than it think. Like it has the world figured out, and like people have not figured it out.
Yeah.
Like I don't like when comics are heavy-handed with those messages. Where like, well, if we only loved each other more, a lot of these problems would disappear. Which is what this book doesn't do. It still shows it's like that people either they don't listen or they don't care, or that it like the problems aren't solved that easily.
Yeah, and Fred and Barney are just as bad to their pets as their owners are to them. Like there's lots of like flaws in the characters and everyone else too.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things that stands is Fred is the one who's like saying like genocide and all this stuff, but he was the most gung ho to go to war in the first place. Like it shows how easily manipulated even the best of us are.
And there's even stuff like Slate at the end being there, like, I invite you all to come over to my house because like you've become my family, and no one listens to him because they don't think of him as family. And then he's just sitting there lonely with what he has. It's like he's not just a one-dimensional like, I'm a crony capitalist bad guy. It's that he sacrificed too much to make Bedrock.
And he's doing what human beings in general as an entirety have done, which is we want to make our imprint on the universe. Like Wilma too. Wilma was trying her own way of making her mark on the universe because we don't want to be just specks.
Yeah, the handprints.
Yeah.
Literally their mark on the universe.
Yeah, like all human beings want to do in a large scale is make our handprint on the universe.
Yeah. So, I think we all like this pretty much. Would you guys read Volume 2?
Yes. I would.
Absolutely.
I think when Volume 2 comes out, we will probably do it.
I would hope so. I think this might be my favorite thing we've done on this whole show.
It might be. I'm just trying to compare it between After the Archies might edge it out.
Yeah, Sly's always edging us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I would love to hear more people's thoughts on it, so you should follow us on Facebook or email us, divisiveissues@gmail.com. And as always, you should rate and review and subscribe on iTunes. Especially subscribe. It helps the most. And I want to give a quick shout out to the Comrade Radio Network. And this week I want to recommend Tales from the Static, because last week it'll be a couple weeks by the time this comes out. Ryan released a bonus episode where he reflected back on some of his episodes before, and it was really delightful, and it was short. So if you haven't checked out the show yet, that's a great place to start. And I have to also quickly announce you should check out my new podcast called We'll Get It Right Next Year. It's very funny, and we just try to guess at what happens in the movie We Bought a Zoo. I promise.
Take Ryan's word for it. It's very funny.
Yeah.
I promise it's great. Our episode 3 should be out by the time this episode comes out, and Owen from Classic Schmassic is on it, and it's delightful. So you should listen. It's on iTunes and all that stuff.
No.
Okay, fine. And
Fine. I'm fucking quitting the show now.
that's all I got. Does anybody have anything else to say?
No.
Nope.
Cool. So, thank you guys so much for listening to Divisive Issues. I have been one man plus one woman equals two weird.
I have been Cro-Magnon. I mean, sorry. I mean, Neanderthal.
I've been just another handprint on the universe.
And I've been your Lord and Savior, Gerald.
Stay in continuity.